Hey guys, welcome back to the Evolve Move Play podcast. Today I'm here with Jason C. Brown. Jason is a absolute um, old G of the movement, kettlebell, functional fitness space. We've had him on the podcast before. Um, I don't want to do the whole tell me all about your history. If you guys need to know who Jason is, um, you can go back and watch that original podcast. But, long story short, taught a lot of kettlebell stuff, dabbled in all the play stuff, dabbled in lots of ideas around natural movement, and kind of just a general geek about the physical world, and one of my favorite conversation partners. So you just pulled up a new toy. You want to show the audience your toy? For those of
Yes.
you,
So this is they call it a Tai Chi or Tai Chi ball. Fighting Monkey calls it a dragon pearl. I have not heard any Tai Chi or Qigong people actually call it a dragon pearl, but I will use that name freely and openly. I got this from a gentleman in Portugal. It's beautiful hardwood, 12 pounds. I'm afraid to use it unless it's on a jiu-jitsu mat or a judo mat, because if I scratch this bad boy, I'll be brokenhearted. Here's the other one I got from him.
so just
This
for
one I'm
anyone
not
who's just
so.
listening and not hearing, we're looking at a beautiful, almost perfectly round wooden ball made of different pieces of wood, creating really wonderful patterns. It's about
Yes,
the size of like a volleyball.
this
And
one's about the size of a volleyball. I do have larger ones also. Hold on here, baby. It's a cool fight. Let
yeah,
me on
yeah.
a screen.
Here we go.
This company is out of the UK, and
Okay.
this is pretty solid. This is actually almost a little too heavy to.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you can lift it for like strength training if you wanted to or something like that, but it's a little too heavy to do like play based stuff on.
Okay.
With
So you have these big, heavy wooden balls,
Yes,
and you said you bought five of them.
I did. I went a little overboard, Rafe.
All overboard. So what are you doing with them?
Just playing. I have no set, no
Yeah.
set agenda. It's like I go out and I touch the texture of the wood, and whatever little sparks get ignited in me when I pick them up, that's what I do. Sometimes it's overhead work. Sometimes it's just passing from hand to hand. Sometimes it's rolling on the ground, and no agenda. I'm at a point in my life where my movement practice is just completely open, I guess you could say.
Yeah. How old are you now, Jason?
51.
You're 51 and you've been basically working professional in the fitness industry your entire adult life?
97, since 97. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And yeah, I'm 42 now, and I basically I think I'm giving up on Instagram.
You think you're giving up on Instagram?
And for myself
Dude,
personally.
it's horrible. It's horrible.
Yeah.
I can't stand it. The only reason why I'm on is because of like people like you, and there's a few people that I think I would lose contact with if I weren't on there.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it's just.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I think about, so originally you pick up a practice like parkour and you're doing
Yeah.
it because you enjoy it. And then you maybe, you cultivate some skill, you become prominent in your local community, and you can use a tool like Instagram, or before Instagram, YouTube, and still YouTube, et cetera, to be able to share something, right? Originally it's just about sharing. It's like, hey, I'm really curious about these things. I'm really interested in these things about the practice. I want to show other people. I want to be engaged in dialogue. And then maybe professional opportunities come out of that, right? So now I'm traveling the world coaching, and it comes from the prominence that I've created through these social media sites. And now you start thinking, like, every time you practice, did I capture a line that's going to attract enough attention?
Yeah.
And so now you're not practicing to serve yourself in some sense. You're like farming yourself for the production of an aesthetic product that you can use to gain prestige and fame and potentially money, hopefully. Um,
Hopefully.
very often, not as effectively as people think
No.
through these online platforms. And it's like you become a slave on Google's farm or Meta's farm, and you
Yes.
don't even realize it. And
They say
so,
what's that quote, Rafe? When the product wait when
oh,
the
the product, the service
when the
is free,
service is
you're the
free or
product.
something,
Yeah, yeah,
you are the product and we are the products.
yeah,
So you
absolutely.
just said something so beautiful, Rafe, because I have these cherry blossoms and plum blossom trees in the
Mhm.
backyard, and it's springtime, it's early spring here. And
Yeah.
the flowers, they're just so gorgeous. I have a white one and then I have two pink ones. And I like qigong, I like tai chi. I do it outside very often. And my wife was like, "You should go film like a
Mm.
white cherry blossom qigong video." And I was like, "Yeah, that would probably do pretty well on Instagram."
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
and but then I couldn't stomach the thought of like what you just said, like that would it almost goes at this point in my life goes against who I am, because I want to do things because they feel good for me, right? And I want to do my work, and filming that just to get views or thumbs up or something like that. And quite honestly, Rafe, you and I talk about business quite frequently. I don't think it would translate into anything. We do these things so we can, maybe sell a certification
Yeah.
or sell a workshop or something. But the return on that, I mean, I look at the analytics. I'm not sure if you look at the analytics. I can get 1,000 likes and not sell one product, and I'm like,
Mhm.
man, I could have just as easily done my Tai Chi at the park and not
Yeah.
cared about anything, right? Just been in the moment.
Yeah. How much of our life is being conducted as if we're on stage versus how much of
Yeah.
it is I'm here to enjoy this moment. And there's something, I love to go back and look at all the videos that I've captured all the years and remind myself of things that I've done and memories and connections with people. So there's something beautiful about that. But there's also a way in which the intent to capture it, it breaks you from the moment in which you're in.
Yes.
So much of what we are looking for in life is actually to inhabit the moment. Um, and so it's a weird thing, but I'm luckily at a place kind of in my professional development now that uh, I don't necessarily need to do that. And maybe I didn't need to do it a lot longer than I thought because um, the it's very clicks or likes or shares, whatever, they're relatively easy to generate and they give you a big dopamine hit. But the relationship between them and the end products that you're looking for, which is like, you know, money might be the most direct, but ultimately, money is not even the thing that you want. What you want is space and time and resources and meaning, love,
Yeah.
and and you get some of that from those experiences. I've got lots of amazing connections with people all around the world through these things. And yet at the same time, it's a poison pill. It's like you can't get the benefits without exposing yourself to this risk of disassociation from the present moment.
Yes. Yeah.
And yeah,
Rafe, as an outsider, I can tell you that your videos personally have inspired me. So I'm glad that you have put those out. A recent story is I was watching your videos, and I'm so sorry, I forgot the gentleman's name. You interviewed him, the guy that does Tai Chi.
um,
You were talking about the three qualities necessary to be a good coach.
yeah. I mean,
The gentleman that
I
does
don't,
Tai Chi, the author.
yeah.
Um,
Oh, John Vervaeke.
yes, yes. Man, that video you were talking about the three qualities needed to be, and before I think you hit record, Rafe, we were talking about where you are professionally, like mentoring young coaches, and I feel that's where I am in my vocation as well. And you were talking, John is his first name.
John Vervaeke, yeah.
Yeah, you and John were talking about the three qualities necessary to be a good coach, and I was like, that is like one of the sweetest conversations I have just heard, because you blended all of this wonderful content and information together. You were talking about empathy
Mhm.
and charisma, and of course, technical knowledge and stuff like that. But then he brought in play, because the verb used in Tai Chi is not do or
Mhm.
practice or make. It's honestly play. So
Yeah.
you two were going so well with one another, talking about that. It's like, I'm glad Ray puts this out. And of course, your return to the source video, man. Like, I stole that from you every time. Every time I take, I'm not in the moment, in
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
present moment, and I take a picture of myself and my boys and my wife and my family out in nature. Return to the source, my friend.
There we go. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Well, as an outsider, Rafe, I'm glad you did put those out, but I completely understand where you're coming from.
yeah. It's there is beauty and there's joy and there's love that can come in producing art that you share with the world. But you know, I think, sorry, this is kind of a tangent, but I think a lot about the early days of the internet, and I think about how joyful and free it felt.
Oh, yeah.
And, and I think that it had a lot to do with the fact that it was actually uh, only a playground. It wasn't professionalized at all. For
Mm.
most of the content, most people who are throwing websites up, most people are doing short form video and flash animation, all this stuff. They were just doing it because of the joy of it.
Yep. And discussion forums and stuff. I mean, we're all amateurs, all just
Mhm.
doing things because we love them, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and so then people are now they found professional things, which is great, right? Like I've always said that I want people who are dedicated to movement to be able to make really good money teaching it, because
Yes.
then they put their whole mind and heart and soul, body into that practice so they can bring something forward, right? It's like if we have to go be bankers and do movement stuff in our spare time, we won't be able to go very far with it. That was the theory. Um,
Yeah.
and and I think like any number of niches online sort of went down that same pathway of like, hey, I'm really good at flash animation. I like making people laugh. Or what if I could make money doing it? But there's this weird thing that happens, which is that you end up falling into being a content farm, right?
Yeah.
Where you're no longer sort of saying, hey, this is in this moment, I'm genuinely inspired by this idea and I want to share it with the world. To like, okay, I know that I have to produce an Instagram video every day, or I have to produce 2 Substacks articles a week in order to um, maintain my analytics and grow my audience and reach the professional goals that I have. And so like I'm on Substack and Twitter and YouTube, et cetera. And I have this sense that so much of the content that's out there only exists to be content. Right.
Completely agree. Yeah.
And so it's like I'm just you can wade into this just wall, this ocean, this raging river of content that was
Yeah.
generated just to be a raging river. And then you're if you're in it, you're like, well, I have to publish. Like John Vervaeke, my mentor. I love John. Uh, he's got a podcast, right? I love his podcast. I listen to his podcast. Um, Jordan Peterson has a podcast. Jordan Peterson is a huge influence on me, right? I go back to the early days when Jordan Peterson was publishing in 2017 his lectures from his university lectures. And it was like, man, where can I go get stuff like this? But now Jordan publishes like 2 interviews a week,
Yeah.
and John's got stuff, and it's like I can't listen to it. Like,
Yeah. I had a fellow play facilitator reach out to us, Kyle Fincham.
okay, yeah,
You know,
yeah, I know
yeah.
Kyle
He's like, hey, you listen to this. What's his name? Uh,
Huberman.
yes. How'd you know? They had a 3-hour podcast on play. And
Yeah.
Kyle was like, hey, can you listen to this? And I'm like, no, I can't. I'm not listening to a 3-hour podcast on play. I'll listen to Rafe's 5-minute, YouTube videos, because that it's that rich of content that it can be. I'm, I don't think you need 3 hours. Who has 3 hours anyways to listen to freaking citations on play? If you need 3 hours of citations on play, something is wrong, man. Right? I don't know.
Yeah, I
Even
mean,
with Rogan, I love Rogan, man, but who's got 3 hours
yeah, I don't know, but people do it.
every single day?
Working.
I
It's
guess
working.
I think people with desk jobs just put that on in the background and they're like, let
Yeah,
me check my cell files while I actually listen to Rogan or something.
yeah, it's just it's an interesting thing that's happening where I did listen to that Huberman episode. It's genuinely really good. I wanted to
I'm,
produce a call, kind of breaking down how, basically what he's talking about and the stuff that we've been doing to meet the need that he's discussing in that episode. One of
yeah,
the things that, yeah, anyways. Yeah, so we're swimming in this ocean of content, and then the question is that content being produced because someone actually needs to express something? Someone's actually spent the time to say something that really matters to them, or is it because they need to meet a deadline?
yeah. I'm not sure if you've been paying attention to like all these top YouTubers, but there are many top tier YouTubers just leaving or minimizing stuff, and I'm sure they're making good money. Maybe they're not making as much money as they were when the algorithms were different and everything. But even with that attractiveness of making, I'm going to say passive, maybe we can say semi passive,
Yeah.
right? But they're still leaving because they are burnt out with that constant content production.
It's a weird thing because it's like if you make bread, you know that you need to make bread every day because the bread that you made the day before is actually eaten,
Yeah.
right? It's like people need that every day. But if you make art, it's not necessarily the case that you have to produce exactly the same thing the next day. And
No.
right, like we feed these appetites, but in a weird way, it's like you put yourself into feeding the appetite so that you can grab a piece of the appetite and keep your
Yeah.
slice of the appetite large enough. Um, and
I read an article once about Meatloaf, the musician. He made $20 million a year
yeah,
off of what it was a dashboard. You know what I mean? Like his most
oh,
popular song,
okay.
Dashboard here. Uh,
Oh,
dude,
jute
I never
boxes.
liked it. Nah, it's Dashboard
Not
something.
not dashboard. Okay, I don't know dashboard.
But
Smooth and simple.
you and I are obviously not Meatloaf fans, but 20 million and to your point, he created that once.
Hmm.
And he didn't have to worry about creating that again and again and again because he was artistic. He created something once. Listen, like one of my favorite musicians is Stevie Nicks. She's not putting out new music every you know
Hmm.
her stuff is timeless. It's legendary. Her voice is legendary.
Yeah, yeah. The artist that came to mind for me is Tolkien. Right, Tolkien's my
Yeah,
favorite author.
yeah.
17 years between The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. And really, he only produces these two major works that are popular. But he's the
How
most
many? 17?
17 years from
Yeah,
I believe it's 17 years from the publication of The Hobbit to the publication of Lord of the Rings. The Silmarillion is, edited by his son after he dies. But really, like in his life, he actually only produced two major works that were widely popular. But he's the most influential author of the 20th century.
right.
He took the
Yeah,
time to do it right. He could do that because he had a job.
yeah. Right. He had a job.
He was he was a he was the professor of Anglo-Saxon and philology at Oxford.
Right. You know what I think about Rafe? Like, what I understand your point, and I fully support your opinion because I share it. But what if you and I were to outsource?
Mhm.
Like, I would really love somebody just to follow me around, filming the content, and then I don't even have to worry about my phone. Then I don't have to worry about uploading or putting a cool little music bit to the videos. What if I just paid somebody that absolutely loved that aspect of the field to
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah, that's the future, I think, for me anyways. I just had one of my apprentices here in town for a couple months filming for me and editing and putting stuff up. So like 90% of the posts that have been put up on my page in the last 2 months have been put up by Charlie. And I'm talking to another
Yeah,
young guy right now about coming on and taking on that role. He's a filmmaker already, and he's also a very skilled parkour athlete, and he's also like really deep in the John Vervaeke world. So he's a really,
perfect.
you know, it'd be incredibly ideal if we can make that work. Because yeah, I don't want to, like, you can only do so many things really well. And
Yes.
uh for me, like maybe I could go teach myself to edit video really well, and maybe I could teach myself to understand the algorithm, and I could teach myself to grow Instagram and whatever. But it's like what I really want to grow is the depth and sophistication of the evolve move play method. That's what
Right. Right. Have you ever heard that book, The One Thing?
I've heard of it. I haven't read it.
It's I think you would enjoy it. There's another book called Unique Ability as
Mm.
well. He's a Canadian author. What you're talking about is like the one thing. Like, what is your one thing, Rafe? And your one thing is teaching, mentoring, that type of work. And then you just have everyone else handle all the other details, right? Your unique ability is teaching. It's
Yeah.
getting the information and sharing the information in a very nice, simple way so others can understand and then apply that information.
Yeah.
And both authors say if you want to be happier, of course, but also if you want to make more money and live a deeper, richer life, financially as well as spiritually or whatever, it's to focus on that unique ability,
Yeah. You
right?
go. Yeah. I mean, that's the basic theory of capitalism. We talked about that in our last conversation, comparative advantage, right?
Yes.
You need to spend more of your time on the place that you have the most comparative advantage. That's the way to win at the game of moving capital around. There's a downside to that, which is that it can very easily over specialize you, right? Start
Yes.
taking away. Because one of the things that I'm playing with in my life right now, it's alive for me right now, is cooking.
Mm.
So my first professional world was cooking. I started slinging burritos when I was 16 years old. And I loved pizza, so I got myself into, teaching, making pizza, and I got into a really good, high quality pizzeria that did like, other traditional Italian dishes, right? So I learned to make tiramisu, for instance, there, and
Yeah.
chocolate souffles, and so I lived in a world then where my, I was going to college parties and they were terrible, cheap beer, loud, terrible music. I was like, why don't we do this better? Why don't we like make a feast and invite like our friends of bands to play? And so yeah, I got really into that. And then with trying to stay super lean and light for parkour and everything, like, really restrictive diets and just training all the time and working at night, I just gave up on cooking for years. So
Yeah.
it's like now I'm cooking again, and there's so much sensual pleasure in like making a sourdough bread. And it's like, well, it's not, like I'm not gonna start my Instagram's not gonna be filled with sourdough. No.
No.
I'm not gonna become a trad wife on Instagram. Uh,
That's off brand, Rafe. That's off brand.
the algorithm doesn't like me already because I do too many things. I'm not specialized enough.
Oh
That's
God.
um so it's like it's just because it brings joy to my life.
Yeah.
And we can get so hyper focused on productivity in this capital system that we don't get any joy. I saw there's this comedian I follow, and he was making fun of like productivity culture. And he's like,
Yeah.
I don't even sleep with my wife anymore. I hire someone to do that. That's time I could be grinding in the office.
Do you know who Jenny Odell is?
I know I'm not familiar with Jenny Odell.
Jenny Odell. She has a book called How to Do Nothing.
Hmm.
and the title really throws people off.
Mm-hmm.
It threw my wife off too. It's just like, what? You already do so little. You already do so little. You bought a book called How to Do Nothing, and but she's all about productivity. She's like, productive for what?
Yeah.
Productive for what? Right?
Make more content to drown
Yeah,
people.
I guess.
I've been thinking a lot about the idea that that the current capitalist system is less about meeting needs than it is about manufacturing needs.
Perfect. Yeah, I was going to say creating needs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like we're trying to actively manufacture desires in people such that we can then hook them into some sort of capital generating thing. But in some sense,
Totally.
it's like when you make somebody a house, that's a real need, right? When you grow somebody food, that's a real need.
Yeah.
But a VR machine to play video games,
Yeah.
it's not a real need.
Now, can I give you a great example? Because I know you and I share similar views on this. Youth sports,
Yeah, there you go.
right? My youngest son is now 11.
Mm-hmm.
He has, I refuse to participate in this nonsense. He has 11-year-old friends, classmates that are flying from Pennsylvania to Orlando to play in tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
Tournaments. These are like poor Appalachian people that are trying to fly their kids to Orlando for a weekend tournament because somebody manufactured
Yeah.
that desire, right? And just think about like every year it is, oh, we're not going to use. I'm glad my kids play sports. I don't want to sound like I'm negative about that. I'm glad they're active and they play sports. But like every year it's a different bat,
Mm-hmm.
right? Oh, you need a bat because this one is 35 millimeters and not 37 millimeters. Oh, all right. How much is that new bat? $500. What? Or all the kids need batting gloves. I never played with batting gloves. I'm not sure if you did, but now they need batting gloves. Now there's a sliding glove. Have you
Yeah,
seen
yeah,
this?
yeah. I've seen the
Yeah,
sliding gloves.
yeah. 10-year-olds need sliding gloves.
Yeah, yeah. Meanwhile, the best athletes in history hit
Never
pennies
used them.
with sticks, right?
Yes. Yeah. The Dominicans are playing baseball with like a broomstick and bottle caps because they don't have the resources. And American kids need two batting gloves, one for each. And actually, let's say four because they need two that matches one jersey and two that match the other jersey,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then they need a sliding glove. I know one kid that has two sliding gloves. It's just like, but that's manufactured. Somebody in some industry said, let's sell these gloves to these 10-year-old kids' parents.
And I mean, ultimately,
I wonder how many ads are on. My kids aren't on TikTok, but I wonder how many ads are on TikTok targeting these adolescents
yeah,
to
new
sell them
gadgets,
gloves.
new
Yeah,
gimmicks, new whatever. And it's like, ultimately, what does all that serve? Like you give your kid a new glove, he's happy. She's happy because you saw a desire in her and met it for him
yeah,
because they get social prestige, they get some sense of identity, right? They get to associate themselves with some hero. But like none
right.
of those things are actually contained in the sliding glove,
No.
right? Like we're in some sense like creating a world in which accessing fundamental human things gets hidden behind more and more technical layers. Just so that we can sell things, right? And we call that
Right.
progress, call that GDP.
Yeah.
It's like that, like I
You know,
think,
I always compare my kids' uh, life with my life in the 70s. my best memories were playing with my friends, and we didn't have anything.
Mm-hmm.
We barely had bikes.
Yeah.
We barely had skateboards. Our baseball games were like we borrowed everybody's things. You didn't have a glove, I used your glove. You used my glove. We had a dirty baseball we found in the freaking side of the road.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't those memories are the deepest, most profound memories I have of just playing with my friends, and we had nothing.
Yeah. And but you had each other.
We had each other, we
Most
had the
importantly.
moment,
Yeah.
we had the experience.
Yeah. Like I have three beautiful children. My oldest daughter's 11, my son is 9, and my youngest girl is 6. And um, they have 6 grandparents. My father died last year, so they're down to 5. But they have like basically 6 grandparents. Everybody's middle class, and especially their grandparents who live further away. There's just a river of stuff that arrives at our house. Like, we get them to clean their room and they find toys that they were excited about 6 months ago that they haven't seen for 6 months because
Your children.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and we do a fair amount of activity, right? Athletic activities. So we go, through the winter we go to the ninja gym once a week, which is awesome. We were doing martial arts for a long time. We're taking a break from that. The girls have done dance. I try to get the boy to dance. He dances all the time. He's an amazing dancer. Won't take a class. But maybe that's okay. Maybe I should stop trying to make it
My
play.
boys were great dancers too, but they wouldn't take a class either. So weird.
Yeah, my son plays rugby,
Yeah.
and I feel like in a lot of ways, and I mean, I grew up under the poverty line, right? I grew up with my
Me
mom
too.
worried about being able to buy me clothes, right? Shopping at
Me too.
Kmart in order
Yeah.
to afford a new pair of shoes.
Dude, I'm telling you, I had hand-me-downs.
Yeah.
I remember my dad was a mason and a contractor, and he got hurt on the job once and he couldn't work. His like he broke his ankle so badly that my brother was on the job with him. My
Mhm.
brother threw up. That's how badly my dad was
Mhm.
hurt. So I grew up with a single income family. It was my mom, and so we had hand-me-downs. And I remember one neighbor, and I remember the conversation, and it was on my friend Chad's porch.
Mhm.
And my pants had so many repairs, like patches on them, that
Mhm.
she offered to buy me a new pair of pants. And
Mhm.
I went home and I told my mom that. And my mom was so, I don't know, I think it was a combination of embarrassment,
Mhm.
but also like pissed off, you
Oh, yeah.
know?
Yeah.
But I got a new pair of pants out of the deal.
That's good.
But yeah, poverty is no joke.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
I still would not take it. Those memories are the best memories ever, man.
I feel like my kids are impoverished in a different way, and I don't know how to fix it because it's in the social.
I think it's
It's
by design, though, Rave. I think, let's just say the powers. I think the powers try to engineer that depth away because when there's that lack of depth, what steps in?
that's when that's when we self-soothe with all these products.
Yes, yeah. So they purposely create this emptiness. I believe they
Yeah.
purposely create this emptiness and this void, and then I mean, people call it retail therapy.
Mm. Yeah.
Right? It exists because, oh, I'm lonely. I'm sad. What am I going to do? Let me go to Amazon. Let me go to the nearest mall. Let me go do this or whatever. Right?
Yeah. So we
And I
live on,
think it's by design. I know a lot of people think I'm a conspiracy theorist or whatever, but like
doesn't have to
you
be
are
by
the
design.
product, my friend. You are the product.
I mean, it's probably partially by design, but like the system itself is not something that a group of people sit down and like design. It's too
Yeah, I
complicated.
don't think Zuckerberg is meeting with Bezos.
Yeah, it's more like I think it's more something of like a set of incentive structures that have gotten running, and you have a kind of path dependent outcomes. Like one of the things that I was talking about, I spoke with my friend Aaron Cantor, recently, and we were talking about the education system, right? And we're talking about it starts with the Prussian military system, right? The Prussian military goes out and kicks everybody's butt, and they have a really specific way of educating people.
Mm.
And it works in this specific moment in time. And then early factory people start saying, hey, this is a good early industrialists are saying this is a good way that we could educate people to make them effective factory workers. And that design basically gets into the schools and becomes the fundamental way that we still haven't been able to think our way out of to educate children. And it's not necessary. It's like the heads of all the education departments aren't getting together and like laughing over a fire while
Right.
throwing toad's eyes in saying like we're going to design the slaves of the future, right?
Right. Yes.
They're just like they're responding to all of these incentive structures. Like they've got legal challenges they have to face, they've got a teachers union they've got to deal with, they've got parents and the expectations of parents, they've got Hollywood and the cultural power of the stories that we tell and everyone's expectations. Like all these things are conditioning the frame in which they can approach these problems. But you end up with this world where we live on a cul-de-sac, right? At the, quiet, right next to a beautiful park. And we do have like a little play group that's developed now of 4, 5, and 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds. And it's amazing. Like you'll go outside and just see like this gang of 6-year-olds on bikes riding around the
Perfect.
cul-de-sac.
Love it.
But there's also 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds and 10-year-olds and 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds who live on this cul-de-sac and the next cul-de-sac over, and they're not outside.
Yeah. I saw a quote the other day that said, if you want to take away your child's childhood,
Mm-hmm.
give them a phone.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, we're fighting that fight with my daughter now. I've always told her 100% you don't get a smartphone until you're 16, right? The
Yeah.
research on that is abundantly clear. But she's like now not happy about it.
How old is she?
She's 11.
Oh, that's young though. 11's young.
She's also very precocious, right?
Yeah.
She's really smart and she's physically precocious. She looks like
Yeah. Yeah.
and oh man. So, but it's like the problem is that it's not that we're taking away her childhood by giving her a phone. We're not giving her a phone, but all of her friends, the childhood available has been taken away by the culture of giving phones to all the kids. So it's not like the option is go play with the kids outside who are outside because they're not outside anymore.
I know. It's sad. I have 3 boys, and the middle one, I would always be like, "Go outside, man." He's
Yeah.
like, "There's no one there.
Yeah.
There's no one there." I was like,
Yeah.
"He's a baseball player and he rides bikes." I'm like, "Go find them,
Yeah.
Dad. There's nobody there."
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, we're everyone thinks the Northwest is like the Pacific Northwest is just like a gray rain cloud for the
Right.
entire. The reality is we have like some of the nicest summers around. Like, we have a
Yeah.
seasonal rain shadow with, we average less than an inch of rain a year or a month in July and August, and occasionally we'll have a year where that'll start in like March, and we appear to be having one of those years where it's actually like kicked off and we're getting just, you know, 60-degree days and sun every day.
Beautiful.
It's absolutely gorgeous. And I'm going through these neighborhoods. There's no kids outside.
None.
We go to the park, right? We go to the park. I take my youngest daughter loves to go for walks for us. It's amazing.
Yeah.
We go for a walk and she's doing cartwheels. She's jumping over creeks and she's running up the hillsides. And she got a shirt that said "Girls Get Dirty Too." And she
Yeah.
like ran and rubbed herself on a fallen stump to make the shirt dirty.
Great. You're doing good work, Rafe.
Yeah. But we see adults and we see dogs, but we don't see children out there,
Yeah.
right? Maybe babies in strollers. But like for every adult who runs by or rides by on their electric bike, there's zero children who are free.
Yeah.
There, you do
You know,
not
we
see a single 9-year-old walking through the park, being playful, doing 9-year-old stuff with other 9-year-olds ever in this park that's surrounded by residential neighborhoods. Like that. Yeah.
residential neighborhood. Yeah. I know. I live 2 blocks away from the elementary school. Parents will drive their children there on beautiful days.
Yeah.
On beautiful days. I don't know if they have this in Washington, but we have like I thought it was a national day. Maybe it's not. It's like a national walk to school day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like,
Yeah.
that motherfuckers, that's my everyday. Like,
Okay.
we're 2 blocks away from the school. Why you have to have a national day for this?
Yeah, you know what they call that in Finland? They call it
What?
Tuesday and Monday
Tuesday.
and
Yeah,
Wednesday and Thursday
right.
and Friday.
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. So, hey,
I always feel like I'm a little too bleak and a little too dark with current situations. And sometimes I let myself get down, you
mhm.
know? But then I don't know if we're ever going to be able to come out of this. I don't. Maybe there's going to be like some huge new renaissance where people will return to a more natural state or be able to blend it somehow. You know, Frank always talks about that. When you're in nature, be really deep in
Mhm.
nature.
Yeah.
And then when you come home and you're on your laptop because you got to do work, be in your laptop,
Mhm.
right? But then when you're out in that park, tree running, really be in that park tree running, right?
Yeah.
Or really climbing or really swimming or just be there, be present. And then when you come home, all right, totally cool. Right?
Yeah. I
The problem is that what's the constant partial attention
mm,
also. Have you ever heard that term?
yeah. Yeah, it's something I've
Constant
been working on.
partial attention. It's like you're not on your phone and you're not with your kid
Hmm.
and you're in this weird yeah, you're like, where am I? Like I'm in this like little purgatory of like 1 foot in that place, 1 foot in this place, and I can't enjoy either because I won't fucking put the phone down or
Yeah,
you know.
I've noticed it. It's like a really strong thing that I'm attending to in my family now, and it's not even just like phones and stuff, even books, right? Like I would say over the last couple of years, like probably 75% of the fights that have kicked off between my wife and I um, are because we tried to talk about something while one of us was looking at a computer.
Computer
Yeah, or a
interest
phone, right?
or phone, not like an analog book.
Not no, but with the kids, like we don't
Yeah,
let our kids really don't have devices, and they will
yeah,
try to read while we're talking to them,
yeah,
or they'll try to read while their siblings talking to them. Like
yeah.
they won't disrupt their attention to actually attend to the human being. And
Mm.
it's like that is not acceptable. And we are, and it causes lots of conflict.
That's funny because when I'm reading, I hate to be interrupted.
Yeah,
Oh, I almost bought a shirt that said "Shut the f up, I'm reading,"
yeah.
but I thought that wouldn't go over too well.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, like, I'm interrupting my kids to say it's dinner time, or we got to,
Right,
or like you got to do chores, or here's this thing that we got to figure out as a family. And it's like, yeah,
right.
I actually need your full attention.
Yes,
Constant partial attention. Yeah, and that's so draining for us, right? Like
it is.
flow comes when we're able to focus deeply, and flow
Mhm.
is the state that we actually want to live in. And having our attention defrayed across lots of things, that's a source of anxiety. Yeah, the thing I think, like there's some really interesting things happen with like Jonathan Haidt and Gene Twenge, or like documenting how bad mental health is in young people right now. And they're really pushing back on the smartphones.
Yeah.
And I think that's all great. And but I fundamentally think that evolving,
Direct correlations, man. Direct correlations. It's like
yeah,
here's smartphone usage.
yeah,
Here's
mental health, yeah.
mental health.
Yeah. But I think fundamentally, like because of the way that they're looking at that, they don't realize that it's not as simple as taking away, like, okay, kids should be able to go play outside. Cool. But what do but there's a network effect. If you're the only family that sends your kids outside to play, it's not the same thing as when all the kids in the neighborhood were sent outside to play. So how do you get there? It's like being on, Google, what was it? The Google Facebook equivalent back in the day,
Circles.
Circles or whatever it was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
It's
I
like
think it was. Yeah,
it's like, oh, maybe this interface is better than Facebook, but nobody's here.
yeah. It
Right.
didn't
So
work.
you can be like, hey, being outside playing is better than being on your phone. But if all your friends are on their phones, and they're not outside, then like that's not actually an option for children. And so that's why I think like the work that we've done, work you've done on like actually treating play as something that we can build a culture for, and teaching it to adults so that they can then become advocates for it and can support their children in it, is fundamental.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
cannot simply take the things away that are preventing play and expect it to sort of pop back up to what it was in the 1970s and 1980s. We actually have to do an intentional culture of re-educating the
yeah,
capacity for play and the understanding of what it's like to see a healthy society of people engaging in play. I was at the beach the other day, um, building a little parkour area out of these interesting trees and fallen logs. And this family walks by, and there's a little boy, 6-year-old boy, and there's another cool tree nearby, and he wants to climb this tree. And his parents, as soon as he starts deviating off the path, are just like, no, don't you dare. You're going to fall out of that tree. You're going to go splat. You know, he gets like a foot off the ground, and they're freaking out. You know,
yeah.
it's like people don't know what children are like anymore. They
No.
don't know how healthy children behave. They have no idea what's normal. Like he climbed up into this tree like 2 feet off the ground and had his hand on like branches that were totally supportive. And he's surrounded by like a beach made of like, you know, pebbles. It's super soft. So if he falls off, he's going to be fine anyways.
Yeah.
And his mom is having an anxiety attack, right?
I love it. Here's my darkness again. There was a field outside the elementary school, and a little girl ran into the grass. Grass, Rafe,
Mm-hmm.
grass. And I always make fun of this mom after she said it. Get out of the grass, you'll get ticks. Jesus Christ, you can't even play in grass anymore. Get
Yeah.
out of the grass, you'll get ticks.
Grass is so
Yeah, you
dangerous.
might get a tick,
Yeah.
but like, what else is this poor child supposed to do? You don't let them do anything else,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
Running through a soccer field.
the opportunity cost. There's
Yeah,
risk involved in being in grass. Jesus
right.
Christ.
Check her for ticks after
Yeah.
you go home.
Let her
Right?
play, like you don't realize what they're sacrificing. So I was clever. I was so upset. I wanted to just tell this woman and her husband, like, let this fucking kid do his thing, right?
Yeah.
But I waited, and then I was like, have you heard about the ninja gym in town? And she's like, no. I was like, yeah, they've got a gym for parkour and like American Ninja Warrior stuff here in town. It's great for kids who are really interested in climbing things to build some confidence and competence. And then, you know, he could express that.
Yeah.
And, that's nice because it's nice in a few ways, right? One thing is that when you go to a place that's designated for a purpose like that and you create a culture around it, people can actually attain much higher skills than, kids in the 70s had.
Yes.
Um, And and it's a business, right? Somebody now gets to butter their bread based on that, and that's not so bad either.
No.
And I like supporting my friends, and I like having access to that. But it's also tragic, right? That we feel like we have to have that. But that's where I think we need to go. Like it's not enough to get rid of the smartphones. We have to think about how we are culturally resurrecting the things that the smartphones have exiled and rebuilding a culture of adults understanding how physically competent children can be, what physically competent children behave like, what healthy play expresses like. Because like stuff like rough and tumble play, adults who haven't been around it cannot distinguish it from aggression.
No.
And their anxiousness increases the likelihood that it turns to aggression.
Or injury or
Mm-hmm.
accidents or whatever, right? Or even a reaction from the child.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen so many rough and tumble, like kids tumbling downstairs,
Yeah.
and they were absolutely fine. But I know if somebody were to have reacted, like, ah, my, boom, the kid would have like teared up.
Yeah.
But if
Yeah.
you don't react, the kid doesn't care, right? The kid thought it was funny.
Yeah. There's a cartoon um, that I love. It's like a little 4-year-old running towards his dad, and he gets hit by a giant meteor.
Yeah.
And his buddy's like, "Oh my God!" And he's like, "Shh, don't say anything." And then the next panel, the kids get up and, "Daddy, did you see? I got hit by a meteor."
Video. Right? He's not crying. He's not doing anything, right? He's happy. Yeah.
And the dad's like, "I'm convinced if you just don't say anything, children are invincible."
I don't disagree, right?
So yeah, I mean, obviously there's a caveat to that. Children
Right.
really
Of course.
need to be nurtured and to be seen in their pain and not to be like fed this idea that they have to be tough all the time. But the way that I think about it is we want to be moving our children away from being dominated by fear. So we do not want to feed them our fear, right? When they're actually hurt, you need to be available for them, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
think what I usually say to my kids is, "You're okay, right?" Like, "You're okay, right?" And then
Yeah.
they say no. And then if it's no, then you pick them up and you kiss them and you talk about what happened. But if they say yes, then you're like, "Okay, cool. Carry on."
Cool. Yep. Yeah.
And it's so different than like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" Because no. The answer is
Right.
no when
Yeah.
you phrase it like that. Children,
I really like Frank's term safe emergencies, and I really try to expose my kids to as many safe emergencies as possible. Even when I grapple with them, like I will smother them.
yeah,
I will choke them so much that they can barely breathe. But I'm like, then I'll let a little air in. I'm
yeah,
like, see, you can survive if you just turn on that hip a little bit more, right?
yeah,
You put them in that little mode of you're safe, you're wrestling with dad, but this could be an emergency out on the road, right?
yeah, yeah. Frank Forensic, by the way, you mentioned Frank a few times, so I just want
Yeah.
to presence that for audience. One of the kind of very first people in the kind of, I guess, the modern iteration of the fitness industry to really take play seriously and to start
Yes.
speaking to how
That
powerful.
was his first big book. Play
Yeah.
as if your life depends on it.
Yeah. Play as if your life depends on it because it does. It
Yeah.
does.
And he had that movement, start a movement, which I really thought was a cool
But that's fun.
phrase or tagline. Yeah.
The movement. I've heard that referencing sort of the Ido Portal movement culture many times.
Yeah. It was Frank first, though.
Frank first. Okay. It's so
Yeah.
funny. So many of these like things were there and they were forgotten, right? Like I Scott Sonnet lives here in Bellingham, and
Yeah.
he he I've heard some not so nice things about the way he treats people, um but like some of the ideas that he was playing with in the early 90s or mid late 90s, um like they're so much ahead of the pace of what would then sort of show up in uh as movement culture stuff, right? All
Yeah.
his body flow stuff and the combination of
body flow. He would call it soft work.
soft work. Yeah.
Yeah, soft work, which would, I don't know what today's culture would call it, but it's like when you maybe contact improv, you would know better than me, right? Like if I touch your shoulder and then you absorb the force and roll with it,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it comes from Systema,
Yeah.
right? But
Personal parts. Yeah.
yeah, and Scott had his hard work, which would be like the club bell work
Yeah. Yeah.
and maybe kettlebell work and stuff like that, and sambo, of course. But then he would have the soft work, and it was like that into flow and you know contact improv or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
Systema,
Yeah. I mean,
joint mobility.
like a lot of, like little things that I would pick up from, well, it's interesting to look back at my own kind of education, right? So the first time I really thought deeply about like a joint integrity routine and like joint circles. First time I ever heard the term synovial fluid was through a student of Scott Sonnet's. I was
Yeah,
teaching gymnastics and parkour, and I was practicing parkour with Dan Kamisha, who's a student of his, and
I know Dan. Yeah,
yeah, he started having
is
me.
he still involved in the field at all? Do you know?
I believe that Dan became a firearms instructor, and
Okay,
that's what he specialized in.
okay.
Kind of moved away from all that other stuff. But yeah, Dan showed me those things, and so then I kind of had that, and then eventually, like I remember that I actually did a lot of that stuff in Kung Fu when I was 12 years old, right?
Yeah,
Or at least elements of it were already there in the Kung Fu that I learned when I was a kid. But a little bit more systematic, a little bit more scientific description, kinesiology or physiology of it comes from Scott, and then in
Scott was really good with the marketing terms too.
yeah,
Like I really like a shockability.
yeah,
It was like all break falls, right? And
yeah.
joint integrity stuff, like you said, and
Mhm.
break falls, shockability. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, he was a good marketer in the
Yeah,
ED era. Um, and then I ran into, really, I think it was actually around CrossFit. There was various people who were talking about CrossFit. Scott Hagnes from CrossFit Portland was putting
mm-hmm.
out some good things. And then through Scott, I met Ito and started to experience pieces of what Ito would then go on to call a corset, right?
Yes, yeah,
And then I run into functional range conditioning, Andrew Spina, Michael Chivers, and realize there's some intersection between Ito's work and their work, and who knows what the story is there. And and a lot of this stuff goes back to Tai Chi actually, and Bagua and Jingyi, and the Chinese
yeah,
martial arts.
yeah. I really enjoyed your conversation with Simon Thakur when you guys were talking about Taoist and
Hmm.
qigong and stuff, and you're like, because I'm immersed pretty heavily in the qigong world now,
Hmm.
and I love qigong, and I think I work with like 200 older folks a week now, just teaching
Hmm.
qigong.
Nice.
But it's like a qigong. I call it qigong flow because I'm not about the rules. I'm not about the schools.
Yeah,
We just get together and we play together and we move and we feel good. And you're like, there's Taoists that think they can fly,
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
and people will come to my class with like, who I had like an 85-year-old guy tell me that he wanted to test my jujitsu
Hmm.
with his Tai Chi.
Good luck.
And I'm like, sir, all due respect, I wouldn't even entertain that idea. Like, you don't want me to take you down. You don't want me, you just don't. But you don't understand the power of internal martial arts. Oh, I do.
Yeah,
But I
yeah,
also understand the power of choking your diaphragm.
yeah.
Right. I really enjoyed that conversation.
Oh, I know. That's absurd. It's so funny. The epistemology of martial arts, and it's like there's wonderful stuff in that. Like Systema drives me nuts, right? Because
Oh, me too, man. Me
you know,
too.
like there's people who think Michael Rybico is going to win a fight against an MMA fighter, right? And it's like, I'm sorry, all those demonstrations, they have nothing to do with fighting ability. Not
None. None.
they also think he killed like 400 people.
Yes,
It's a
I
military
know.
sniper. I'm like, this is a legend. This is a myth. This is not a real thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Who's that other guy that just did the documentary? The Tai Chi guy. Andrew, the guy he'll let you touch his arms and he'll throw you across the room.
I don't know that guy. Sorry. I haven't been
I'll
paying
send you a
attention.
video. It's absolutely horrible. You don't even want to see it.
Yeah,
You'll just be disappointed.
I get it, man. I get it. But so people
Yeah,
always ask,
all that stuff is ancient, right? Maxwell taught us qigong before our jujitsu classes, and this
yeah.
was in 90, 97, 96, 97. We didn't know we were doing qigong. We didn't
Yeah.
know we were doing that work. We would shake, we would do the joint mobility associated with it, and then we would do jujitsu. And then finally, some guy was like, "I actually feel better doing this than the hard sparring in jujitsu, because back in the 90s, jujitsu you were just meatheads because
Yeah. Yeah.
you thought you were going to be the next UFC fighter."
Hmm.
And then people grew up and were like, well, maybe I should just go over towards these softer arts.
Yeah.
Steve, what was that stuff you were showing us before class and after class? And he's like, oh, it's qigong. I was like,
Hmm.
all right, cool. Can we just do that?
Yeah. 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 Another old head major contributor to all these ideas that is maybe not as well known now. You mentioned there Steve Maxwell, who's one of your big mentors.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's funny because I've really cultivated and really kept myself to a pretty high level of martial arts capability and parkour capability and strength training capability and acrobatics capability for a very long time. And I've realized as I hit my 40s that it's costly, right? It just, I heard this term that I liked, which was orthopedic cost. What is the orthopedic cost of an exercise?
Yeah, I heard that. That's interesting because I heard that this week. Was that Austin? Austin Yoakum? I think
I
he
didn't
was
hear it
making
from
fun of a
Austin.
certain coach that doesn't like back squats.
Oh, yeah. 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 But but I was like, that's a good, it's a useful thing. It's like,
Totally. Yeah.
you know, I,
You're
I,
42, Rafe?
42.
42?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hate all the people who sort of treat the body as if it doesn't have the capacity to adapt. Right. So you get this thing of like, you only have so many spinal flexion cycles before you rupture a
Oh,
disc.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, no,
Because
that's
they
not true.
studied like a pig spine.
Yeah.
That study was done on a
Yeah.
pig
Yeah.
spine.
A
Yeah.
dead pig spine.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. That may
So
matter, but
yeah, it matters. So the point is that you have to think about these things as like you spend money. It's like you spend money to make money, right? And you want to spend money that has a reasonable ROI. And if you spend too much money, the system might break and now you have negative ROI. So like I buy Facebook ads. So maybe I can spend $90 a day on Facebook ads to try and fill workshops. But if I spend $200 a day, I don't get the same amount of ROI. Now I start getting less ROI because I've flooded the marketplace.
right.
So it's the same thing with your physical system, right? It's like, okay, it's not that there's 100,000 flexion cycles or 100 million flexion cycles or whatever of your spine, but you as an individual at a specific time in your life, et cetera, have a certain amount of flexion cycles that's going to increase the robustness of your body to flexion and an amount at which you're actually going to start increasing the fragility of that system. You're going to be taking too much orthopedic
Risk.
risk, right?
Yeah.
And then you can look at your practices and you can say, hey, Tai Chi, extremely low orthopedic cost.
Yes.
Parkour, a lot higher.
Yes.
Snowboard, massively higher.
Massive.
Right?
I will not get on a skateboard anymore.
Yeah.
My oldest son is still a really good skateboarder. Skimboarding. Do you know what skimboards are?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Dad, do this one. No. Because I know if I just post wrong, if I were to
Yeah.
fall and post or something, forget it.
Yeah. And and then you're dealing with this injury for a little while, right?
Yeah. Maybe forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't know, right?
For sure. And so you can think about how your practice is like, what is the return on investment for this? What is the potential for catastrophic failure?
Yeah.
And then what is the wear and tear on it, right? So push hands, catastrophic failure,
Mm,
basically zero,
probably not. Yeah.
right? But jujitsu, you put enough cycles in, you fatigue yourself enough, the likelihood that you're gonna blow out a knee, tear up an ankle, blow out a hip, tear up a shoulder, it's pretty high,
Could be. Yes.
right? Like over a long-term career. I mean, how many guys do you know who are in their 50s who've like trained multiple times a week for 20 years who don't have a significant injury?
Me.
Year.
But and all my training partners who are in their 50s. But here's the deal.
Okay.
We have really done a good job of filtering out our training partners.
Yeah.
And I have really reduced my volume. I'm 51 and I've been doing jujitsu for what, 25 years or whatever. Wait, do that math. Something, since like 95 or whatever, 96, something like that. And and my coach Steve Maxwell said this, like sometimes you just want to quit while you're ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we call it executive jujitsu. We're all in our 50s. And we actually call it Tai Chi jujitsu. It's like, I'll put my hand in the collar, you block.
Yeah.
That's the type of energy we have. And
You're not wrenching on each other's fingers.
No, yeah, we're not smashing one another's face anymore. We're not, that's it. If
You're
the
not,
move remotely gets on, like any Kimura, any shoulder lock, something like that, that's it. You got it.
yeah. You're not trying to put heel hooks on fast.
No, and at this point, it's play. It's
Yeah.
adult roughhouse. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's exactly what jujitsu is to me and that community. It's an opportunity for 50-year-old people to get together and roughhouse and then
Yeah.
talk shit after class, right?
Which is
If
verbal
you want the
roughhousing.
hard jujitsu, it's right across the street, right there. Those guys are 23. Go
Yeah.
there,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I don't need that anymore. I like to be able to run and jump and flip powerfully in nature. And
Yeah,
that's enough orthopedic cost for me.
totally. Yeah,
Right. That's my like higher risk, higher reward part of my investment portfolio physically.
yeah.
And the rest of I got to go to the other end of the barbell.
Rafe, where would you put your body to body work during your retreats? Like, like not quite the push hands, but like maybe the I don't know what you
I think we keep
specifically
it
call them,
pretty
like the
safe.
arm wrestling. Like I
Yeah.
try to.
Yeah. I mean, the most dangerous thing we do is we play tackle sharks and minnows on a big
Yeah,
sandy hill.
yeah, I've seen that. Yeah,
Like people have gotten bloody noses, taken an elbow and running or something. Uh, that is the most fun thing, man. Like
I'm
every
sure.
year,
Tackle
every
shark.
year,
Yeah.
every year when I just like hit the first person with a wrap up tackle and drag them down to the sand, I just feel like a freaking tiger. And it makes me
Yeah.
so happy and juke somebody out and
You
battle
have
through
one video where the
happens.
guy's almost at the top of that hill
Yeah.
and somebody just comes up from behind. I don't think it's you. I think it's
Yeah.
another participant. Grabs his foot and
Yeah.
just drags him all the way back down the hill. And you just see the defeat, like, oh.
Yeah.
But it's a good time. Everybody's laughing, and you can
Yeah.
see, he's defeated, but he was like enjoying the defeat.
Sand, I think, really makes those games we play a lot safer, right? The
Yeah.
surfaces make such a difference. It's like
Yes.
I love like the Indian mud wrestling, like that's
Oh, I
great.
love it. Kushti.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
stuff like that, like you know, um, makes a big difference in like the sustainability of playing these games long term.
Yeah. So for the older adults that I work with, so this would be the dragon pearl, and you and I
Yeah.
could play with this quite easily. You and I can do body to body work and
Yeah.
partner work with this, and you and I can be pretty vigorous. But for the older folks, I use a cork ball,
Oh, nice.
and it's light
Yeah.
and it's soft, and the texture is very forgiving. But I mean, it's a different stimulus, but it's still, you get the body, you get the sensitivity still, you get the
Mhm.
play still, right? Without the weight and the load and the demands. So texture is huge. Sand is huge.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many little things that we just don't think about that we can do to adjust and make these things much safer. Like I do like grappling and I want to have more grappling. Uh, when I had my apprentice here, there was a couple times where there's several times where we warmed up by doing, the roughhousing stuff.
Yeah.
And I was amazed how much faster I got into my flow state in the parkour practice after a little grappling match to start. It was like,
Mm,
feels so good. And
yeah.
all the more like kind of fighting monkey, movement culture, capoeira contact improv games that are not not so martial. Those are
Yeah.
amazing for sensitivity and flow state and connection and getting like fun happening between everybody. And then boom, we're off and we're ready to go. So yeah, I still I I very much love those, and I'm really looking forward to having more of my students around. One of the cool things that's happening, I mentioned it before this, is that we're debuting this mentorship. So if people are watching this, is going to come out a week from when we speak, and we might have just a couple spots left. So if anyone hears this and wants to get involved, they can hit me up, and if not this year, then next year. But one of the cool things that's happening is it just happens to be the case that I have a few mentees who are here in Bellingham or can come to Bellingham. And so there's going to be at least a period of time where I'm going to have 3, possibly 4 mentees here in Bellingham who I can meet up with, which has not been the case. Like most of my work has been traveling workshops or long retreats or online. And
Yeah.
so the fact that I'm going to be able to get these people together and just like do this stuff is really rich, because when I don't have people around, it's hard to do a lot of the body stuff, And so what I do instead is I go take jujitsu or kickboxing, and that's great. Except when my life is super intense, it's like I just can't afford like my body starts to my I get beat down like on an emotional and physical level when I'm doing a lot of jiu-jitsu and a lot of parkour and a lot of work. So I kind
Mm,
of end up having to pick a primary practice and stick with it for a while.
yeah.
So it's like for me, for me, jiu-jitsu is a kind of, uh, I get to open that door when I've got a lot of resources on hand.
Yes. If I had more opportunity to do body to body work
Mhm.
outside of a jujitsu context,
Mhm.
it would be better.
Yeah.
Because like I totally understand where you're coming from, because sometimes one of my favorite things to do with my boys is just pummel.
Yeah.
And it's weird, but I think like pummeling is this, it's almost like a complete, I'm going to use probably the wrong word, but like the complete drill
Hmm.
or a complete exercise. It's like it's a sensitivity, it's body to body. It's everything. You can make it as physical as you want. My 16-year-old is now 6'3" and over 200 pounds. Like we can really pummel, or we
Hmm.
can go soft and like push handsy type of stuff. And we don't have to go to like a jujitsu, you know,
Yeah.
like even my 16-year-old will like, I'm not putting on a gi. That's that's homosexual dead. Okay, whatever. Just
Wow, you can
let's go.
still say that about out there? You couldn't get away
Oh,
from
it's
it.
horrible. It's horrible. Well, like some of those positions,
Yeah. No, it's funny. I
north
have
south. He's like, don't put me in north south. That's just really. really weird, Dad. And I mean, is he wrong?
No, no. I like
No, yeah,
okay. For some reason, I got a lot of flack from the jiu-jitsu community for a while on my social media. They're like,
yeah,
"Why would you pay to go let someone like have someone jump around in the woods with you?" And I was like, "Why would you pay to have someone teach you to wrestle in your pajamas? Right? You can do that in your backyard too."
yes, yeah. Their jujitsu guys are sensitive sometimes,
Um,
emotionally sensitive.
but I don't know why. The last few times I've been training jiu-jitsu, like I just have this real resistance to wearing a gi. I'm just like, I can't do
I
gi.
love it.
I have to
Yeah.
do, I have to
Well,
do,
you have shared that with me before. Also, I don't think you're a gi guy, though, Ray.
yeah.
You're totally no gi. Yeah,
It's the problem with gi for me is that it really rewards the specialist over the generalist. The thing is
yeah,
that there's this literally there's just a specific type of grip strength that you develop in gi fighting that you don't really develop as much in anything else. It's less transferable outside of jiu-jitsu. So
yeah,
somebody who's a good gi player can slow me down and offset my athletic advantages much more with a gi than, a comparable level of skill can take away my athletic advantages in a no gi situation.
yeah.
So,
That's one reason why I like what Fighting Monkey. I don't know if it's his uncle, Yosef's uncle, or something, but he's like a Greco-Roman wrestler.
okay. Yeah.
They base their body to body work
Mm.
off of the Greco-Roman wrestling.
Oh, interesting.
Of course, it's done playfully and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
And I mean, they have exposure to judo, but it's
yeah,
like
yeah,
no gi judo as well,
yeah.
right? And um, yeah, where you see that as a disadvantage, Rafe, I see it as totally because like you're bigger and stronger than me, so
Yeah.
I would purposely be like, Rafe, put on the
Just do
gi
gi. Yeah, I know, I know. You want to slow me down.
so I can slow
Um,
you down.
the other
Yes,
thing I don't like about gi is actually that I feel like it's easier to injure joints in gi, because it's easier for joints to get stuck and wrapped in the gi. So I actually feel
that's
like gi is more dangerous to,
that's so weird because I completely disagree.
yeah.
I think some fingers I can
Fingers
understand.
get if I've had my
If
ankle.
only though you're unwilling to give up the position. Like if I'm holding on to this forever,
Right.
then I think the fingers can be compromised. But if I know you're going to pass or you're going to
Yeah.
improve your position, just let it go.
Yeah, yeah. I've sprained fingers and toes and
Yeah,
even had my ankle get stuck in someone's gi and tweaked my ankle. I've never had that
interesting.
kind of stuff happen in no gi.
Yeah, yeah. You're not a geek guy.
No, apparently not.
No, I wouldn't. Just from my exposure to you, the limited times that we've been in person with one another, I could tell you're not. You don't move like a geek guy either,
Yeah, yeah.
which
It's
is totally cool.
yeah.
Right?
It's more like a wrestler, right?
Did
More
you like that video I sent you where that guy did the takedown and then he went right into that
yeah,
bomb sweep?
yeah,
That was so intelligent, man.
yeah. I love that stuff. Yeah.
Grappling and body to body work really needs to be. But this goes back to where we were discussing earlier. Like we need to create these safe places where kids can be exposed to dangerous situations, but in a playful, safe environment.
And adults too. That's the thing is like, we talk about
Totally.
education as kids, but in a weird way, like, I mean, maybe this is a professional bias of mine because I work with adults, but I think like we need to create this cultural shift among adults so that they can see what kids need, so they can be advocates for kids, right? Like we have to address play. Like the problem is like, I'm just imagining a Jonathan Haidt character, right? It's like, I love Jonathan Haidt. I love his research. I love his mind. But I'm just imagining him being like, okay, we're gonna make this play thing happen for kids. It's like, how much about play do you understand in your body, Jonathan? Like, how are you
Yeah.
gonna recognize if it's actually working? How are you gonna take those kids? I said the same thing to Jordan Peterson, right? I was on Jordan
Yeah.
Peterson's podcast, and I said, you believe that fundamental to human existence in some sense is that we are the type of thing that wrestles with God. Okay,
Yeah.
great. We got to wrestle with the problem of divinity and transcendence. How are we going to be able to wrestle philosophically? without having wrestled physically. And it's right in Plato, right? Plato says, before you get to be a philosopher king, you got to spend years and years and years in the gymnasia.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you know,
That's there in Shaolin also. That's one reason why that, there's the weak, frail philosophers over there. And then there's a whole nother school. Like what can you learn from these people that are super frail?
Yeah.
Right.
Nothing.
What's that guy's name? He's an Italian author. He was on Rogan once or twice. Really writes about Native Americans. I can send you the book.
I don't know, but
he has a whole chapter devoted on that. Like
virtue, wisdom, courage, they live in the body. I was speaking to Jordan Hall on my podcast a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about this idea that we're a culture that sort of post Descartes is focused on the idea of truth as the most important transcendent value. In a lot of ways, we've lost the idea of the good and the beautiful. And we're looking for certainty. We're looking to be able to foreclose and sort of make everything into a syllogism and an algorithm. But that philosophical tradition basically ends with Gödel, who says, mathematically, you can't set up a system of justification that doesn't rely on axioms that can't be proved from within the system. So our capacity to exert any kind of epistemology is actually fundamentally rooted in an act of faith. You can't get away from faith. But because we're in the certainty, syllogistic, algorithmic frame of Descartes, we think that faith is just the assertion of a proposition without evidence.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you just have to choose to believe in it. But what Jordan said, and we were talking about why physical practice is so important, is he said, faith is an embodied characteristic. Faith is something, right? Faith is something that arises in the body that allows us to then choose to step into the frame that allows us to then accomplish anything. And that's fundamentally what we're training when we do parkour or we do martial arts. You have faith that you can accomplish an armbar on somebody.
Yeah.
When you get into a grappling match, you don't know. You don't have certainty how that's going to come out.
Yeah.
But you have to have faith that your body is going to respond in that situation. And you're training that faith every time you do it. And it's the same thing for me. It's like I'm going to go out. I could do jujitsu too, but when I go and do parkour and I take a jump, every single jump is a leap of faith.
Yes.
And it is an expression and a cultivation of the body's ability to trust.
Yeah.
To trust without certainty, because there's never actual full certainty.
Yeah.
And because I can do that, then I can step into a frame that allows me to actually go out and do something in the world. And because we have educated a generation, multiple generations now, of children who weren't allowed to wrestle, weren't allowed to climb, and weren't allowed to jump, we have a generation of people who don't have the embodied capacity to have faith that unlocks the capacity to truly understand. And so we have complete skepticism, solipsism, and nihilism towards the world. And we can't solve it. We can't solve it through cognitive science or philosophy without actually doing the embodied practices.
I agree completely. Yeah. Ito talks about this practitioner thing, his takes on practitioners. And that's what I really like. These
Can you remind me? I'm not
familiar. So I think the phrase that he uses all the time, and I use this all the time also, it's like skin in the game.
Yes.
Like maybe I'm egotistical, right? Like maybe I'm egotistical, but I want to learn from others that actually have skin in the game.
Yep.
Right? Like I know a gentleman who teaches like biomechanics. And he can't walk.
Yeah.
because he has bad Achilles.
Mm-hmm.
Well, man, if you're teaching biomechanics, I think you should be able to figure out your mechanics.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right? So I'm not taking advice from you. Don't tell me about the soleus. Don't tell me about the gastrocnemius. Don't tell me about my hamstrings. Don't tell me about my arches
Mm-hmm.
until you figure out your arches,
Yeah.
until you figure out your Achilles. Do you have skin in the game? Are you a practitioner?
Yeah. That's why
Or
I
are
don't
you
give
somebody
nutrition
that
advice.
stands up front and just tells me,
Yeah.
the gastrocnemius this and the soleus that? Austin Yoker. Oh, sorry there,
Have you
but
ever
Austin is pretty funny. He's like,
Austin Yoakum? Oh, I love
yeah.
Austin.
He was talking about, he's been harping on three very prominent movement or strength coaches and stuff. And he's like, not a barbell. They had completely, they're like, they don't even pick up any weight,
Yeah, yeah.
but they're the most respected people in the field.
Yeah.
But they don't even work out.
Dude, I should get Austin on the podcast again. Just let him fucking go
You
wild.
should just let him rant. Yeah. It's just
He's
like
ready.
not
He's
one
ready.
barbell
He's fit
has
to
been
pull.
touched in over
Yeah.
30 years of teaching, but they're going to tell you not to do this because of orthopedic risk or whatever.
Yeah.
I only want to deal with practitioners. It's like when I talk with you and I'm like, Rafe, when you do this, what are you feeling?
Mm-hmm.
Right? When you do this, what are you experiencing? When you do this, what is the outcome that you're getting with your students? Great. Now I know Rafe has probably done this for 30 hours,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just in 1 week, Rafe has probably done body to body contact with somebody,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Yeah.
when I say, if you do an underhook here,
Yeah.
what does that feel like to you? What are you experiencing? I can trust you because you have experienced it. You are a practitioner. You have skin in the game, as
You can put
opposed to
faith. You can put faith into, we we've forgotten the body. The body, we are the body. And the body, John Vervaeke says something I really like. He says, your mind isn't in your brain. Your mind is in between your brain, your body, and the world.
Yeah.
It emerges from the interaction of all of these things.
Yeah.
And so your sense of self, the you, right? People think that it's this disembodied thing that lives in their head. And it's like, that's not the case. And so if all you do with it is disembodied things, it's not grounded and you can't have faith in it.
Did you, Rick, did you know I lived in an ashram for a little
I
bit?
didn't know that. No.
Yeah, I lived in a yoga ashram for twice actually. And there was like classes every morning on like Hinduism and Buddhism and that type of stuff, the Vedas specifically.
Yeah.
And people would always ask, what is the difference between the mind and the brain? And I think they really simplified it. The guy said once, he said, the mind determines things based on sense pleasures, like physical pleasures, like does it taste good?
Yeah. Yeah.
Does it feel good?
Yeah.
Right. But then the brain is a completely separate thing. And the brain can step and be like, I know this medicine tastes like bitter, but you need to take it in order to get better or whatever. Right. So the brain is like this intelligent little organ over here. But the mind, if there was a option A versus option B, the mind would pick probably the more pleasurable.
That's an interesting distinction. That's not the way that John would use it, right?
I would like to talk to John about that. I thought it was, and again, this was like a 8 a.m. class.
The brain is the center of the nervous system, but the nervous system is continuous throughout the body.
Yes.
And the brain has multiple layers and functions, right? So one of the functions that you're referencing here is basically a function between sort of impulse and what is it? Reason, maybe? right?
Reason. Yeah.
Your
Yeah.
impulse is to eat the cake. It's your reason
Yeah.
that tells you, hey, this doesn't accord with our long-term goals.
So would the brain be reason?
Well, the brain is both. I mean, the brain is part of both.
Okay. And the
Does that make
mind
sense?
would be part of
The
both as
mind,
well?
well, the mind is the thing, right? The mind is the mind is the experiencing awareness, right?
Yeah.
I think. And then we have multiple parts of it. We have the subconscious mind and the conscious mind. But
Mind is deep, isn't it?
yeah, it is. Yeah. Oh yeah,
It's really weird.
it is.
It's weird that we have like this third thing that goes on, right? We have like body, we have brain, for lack of a better term, and then we have this other thing.
The brain though is just a part of the body
Yeah.
that serves a controlling function, right? Like a lot of the brain is literally just making your fingers go to your nose when you want them to, right? You know,
Right.
and making
Right.
sure, and it's interpreting the sense data, smell, and all that stuff, um, you know, vision, etc. Um, we in our culture have located the mind in the brain, and we have pretty good reasons for doing that now with neurology and everything. But that's a relatively new conception. Other people thought it was in the stomach, or they thought it was in the heart, right? Other cultures did, and then
Yeah.
we become like uh, I think it's Peter Levine who describes this perspective of the body as the brain taxi. Or you've seen people say this and be like,
Yeah.
you know,
Descartes says that too, right? Like the body's just a vehicle to move the brain around or
exactly.
whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like, people have talked about the idea that if you got a brain um transplant, right? Really it's a body transplant. But it's not quite that simple, right? Like
No,
you can't actually just take the brain of one person and put it in another and it's actually the same person. Um,
right.
it's
It's
like
deep, man.
if
It's
you took
deep.
my brain and you put it in Michael Jordan's body, I would not be Michael Jordan, right?
Right.
Like, in fact, I would be much worse than either me or Michael Jordan because my brain is built on controlling my body.
Right.
Everything would be uncoordinated and confused and terrible if I was in Michael Jordan's body because that's not what I've been. That's that they didn't arise together, right? So so mind is a concept that well, it's interesting. So we could think about this like scientifically and phenomenologically. You experience yourself as having mind, right? You don't actually experience yourself as having brain,
Right.
right? Like you've never looked at your brain. Like try to feel your brain. What is your brain doing right now?
Yeah.
You can't do that.
Yeah.
But if I was like, what's in your mind? You can tell me what's in your mind,
Yeah. Oh,
right?
you
But
know
if I
what
was
else
like,
they said in that
what part of
class?
your brain is firing right now?
Yeah, you can't do it. You know
Yeah.
what? It's interesting in that class, they said you can change your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Like I changed my mind right now. Like I'm
Yeah.
going to leave at 8:30 and not 8:35.
Yeah.
But you can't change your brain.
You can, but not
I mean,
not
not
in the moment.
acutely, not like,
Not like
yeah,
acutely. Yeah.
not
Yeah.
like
So
like
in the brain that
a
wires
jacket.
itself, right?
Yeah.
That's
And
that
it does get rewired and things, of course.
neuroplasticity. Okay.
Yeah.
We've reached kind of towards the end of this, the time that we have. Thank you so much, Jason, for
Great.
chatting
Thank
with
you
me.
so much, man. Always enjoy our conversations.
Likewise. Yeah, absolutely. Um, you got anything people should be aware of? Any cool projects? Anything, you know?
Nah, man, I'm sort of like in this little valley of uh professionalism, I guess you could
Yeah.
say. I don't have much going on. I'm just enjoying myself, working locally,
Yeah.
with not much by design, but I've really fallen in love with working with an older population. I
Mm,
would say 55 and older. Even like I have a couple who's 93,
nice.
and I sell it underneath the banner of qigong and tai chi, but it's really just play-based movement for active older adults, and they love it. And I think I work with about 150 to 200 folks per week. I
That's
don't have
amazing.
much going online. going on online.
Well, folks
And,
are
and
in Kings Forge,
what's
Philadelphia.
that?
You're in Kings Forge. Is that what it's called?
Kings Forge. No, my town is Abington. I think you're thinking of Fort Washington. Is that what you're thinking of?
Some
Kings.
area. I thought they were close to that. Abington, Philadelphia. And you're looking for some play-based stuff. Look Jason up. Yeah, thanks for joining me.
Great. Thank you so much, buddy. Appreciate it.